Good morning, friends. Today's talk is on the Nidana Sutta. It's from the Anguttara Nikaya 3.33, I believe. This is a sutta on the three defilements, the common human problem rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths that manifests as greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. And if you look at all three of those things, are really all different components of the problem of ignorance of the way things truly are. The Buddha awakened to dependent origination, which states that from ignorance to 12 observable causative links, all manner of confusion, deluded thinking, and ongoing suffering arises. And it's because of this misunderstanding, a lack of understanding of the true nature of life, human life, in this impermanent environment, that greed, aversion, rooted in deluded thinking, manifests and really overtakes our life. So let me read the sutta. The Buddha teaches, friends, there are three causes for unskillful actions. Greed is a cause for unskillful actions. Aversion is a cause for unskillful actions. And deluded thinking is a cause for unskillful actions. Those first two, greed and aversion, are really two sides of the same coin. Another word for that might be craving or desire. Tanha is a word that's often the Pali word that is often used, which means thirst. It's all part of the same quality of mind of wanting more of something, or wanting something to be different, or wanting less of something, which is really all part of craving and desire. It's a lack of acceptance of what's occurring in the world, and it's a lack of acceptance of who and what we are in the present moment. And that all follows from deluded thinking, a lack of understanding of the way things truly are. The Buddha continues, any action that is born from greed through conceit or eye-making will bring further confusion and suffering as individual life unfolds. So that last reference to conceit, that's the basic human problem. And again, another word for the conceit is eye-making. I'm taking everything personally, and I'm always needing to continue to establish, maintain, and defend this ego personality, which is rooted in ignorance. And it's rooted in ignorance through a lack of understanding of the impermanence of all things, including this thing that we call a self. Now, the Buddha never said there's no such thing as a self. This is an important understanding that is proclaimed in much of modern Buddhism, that essentially that the self is empty, that there's some amorphous void that we should all aspire to, that there's no such individual reference point. And that's just contrary to what the Buddha taught. The Buddha used the term anatta, a common term of his time, but in a completely contradictory fashion. He didn't use the term anatta to say that there's no such thing as a self. He simply said that the views that we the wrong views rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths that we use to constitute a self do not accurately reflect the self. Let go of the views. The views are not a self. The wrong views. Any action that is born from deluded thinking through conceit or eye-making will bring further confusion and suffering as life unfolds. And then he continues, just as a healthy and viable seed, when planted in poorly prepared soil and attended to improperly, will prove unsatisfactory, in the same way, greed, aversion, and deluded thinking will bring actions that will develop unsatisfactory experiences. So what the Buddha is teaching so eloquently here, that no matter what practices we may be engaged in, no matter what we're aspiring towards, is often simply a distraction and a mask to cover that basic problem of greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. In other words, we engage in activity or take on principles or ideologies that seem altruistic and seem to alleviate greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. But if the underlying thinking is still present because of ignorance of Four Noble Truths, we're planting seeds in a poorly prepared field. We have to get at the root of the field. We have to tend to the soil properly, and that means getting to the heart of the matter, which is wrong views, resulting in greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. And this is why the Buddha taught an eightfold path. So any Buddhist path that discounts or diminishes or dismisses the eightfold path or alters it in any way or embellishes it in any way is simply not a teaching that the Buddha taught. It's simply something else. And it likely won't get to the heart of what the Buddha is talking about here. The Buddha continues, now when actions are born that are free of greed, free of aversion, and free of deluded thinking, confusing and unsatisfactory experiences will not develop as life unfolds. Just as a healthy and viable seed when planted in well-prepared soil, and that well-prepared soil is metaphor for a well-concentrated mind, a mind that has engaged in shamatha vipassana meditation, the only meditation method the Buddha ever taught, in the proper context of the entire Eightfold Path, developing the refined mindfulness that is free of greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. So in order to prepare the soil for the seed of what we're hoping to plant and develop, that soil is prepared through a proper right meditation method that develops concentration. This soil, when prepared and attended to properly, when that refers to refined mindfulness, will grow and increase in abundance. In the same way, one well prepared with the proper conditions will develop lasting peace and happiness. The goal of the Dhamma. Person ignorant of their own actions, born of greed, aversion, and delusion, must experience the results of that actions. That's such a clear teachings on karma. I won't get into this. Is not a talk on karma and rebirth. I won't get into all the misunderstandings about what karma means. But the word karma means action. So in this moment, we are experiencing the results of our past intentional actions that are modified by the present level of our mindfulness. In other words, if we're holding in mind the skillful qualities developed through the Eightfold Path, as our life unfolds, we won't be adding any additional momentum towards ignorance. In this moment, our minds will be inclined towards awakening. And that's the most useful teaching on karma. What are we holding in our minds right now? If what we're holding in our mind is rooted in greed, aversion, and deluded thinking, what can we expect to experience? An unsatisfactory life experience, because that type of greed, that type of desire, that type of craving can never be satiated, never be satisfied by a self-referential ego personality, by anatta, because that is an insatiable creation of our own ignorance. When we understand that life unfolds within an impermanent environment that is prone to disappointment, that's the Buddha's description of dukkha, the key to lasting peace and happiness is to let go of the need for anything in this moment to be any different than it is. Why? Because it can't be. If it's occurring, it's occurring. It's already here. It's present. And then as we develop through a well-concentrated mind, the understanding framed by the Eightfold Path of the three marks of existence, of the impermanence of all things, an understanding of wrong views, anatta, the not so characteristic, and the resulting suffering that comes from that misunderstanding, then we will incline our minds towards developing right understanding or right view, the first factor and overarching factor of the Eightfold Path. The Buddha continues, one who has developed wisdom and ended ignorance through the Eightfold Path, this individual abandons greed, aversion, and delusion and experiences clear understanding and lasting peace and happiness. That's the end of the sutta. The the entire Buddhist teaching is to address and abandon wrong view and develop, establish, and maintain through an ongoing practice framed by the Eightfold Path, right view, seeing things clearly, having a mind that is free of the need for anything to be any different than it is. That's a mind that is clear, that's no longer deluded, and so greed and aversion no longer follow from a mind that understands the way things are. It's a mind that is resting in radical acceptance because it has a clear understanding of the nature of human life in this impermanent environment that we all live in. That's today's talk. I hope you found benefit from it. If you did, please consider a donation at becoming-buddha.com. Peace.